Hey guys, here at OSMVTXReviews.com. You're watching our video first look, not our full review, of the LG Lucid for Verizon Wireless. This is a 4G LTE based device for Verizon here in the United States. This is a mid-range Android based device, so it doesn't have the fastest specs, but it does perform pretty well for what it does and has a pretty attractive price point as well, coming in at around $100 or less. As far as specs are concerned, the device runs on Android 4.0 and it has a 4-inch LCD display with a resolution of 480 by 800 pixels. So it has a density of around 230 pixels per inch, which is a okay density. Of course, we've seen a lot higher density panels, but again, this is a fairly low budget Android smartphone, which is great. It has a pretty vibrant screen and a pretty good viewing angle experience, which we'll see in part 2 of our review. The device is capacitive and it is multi-touch enabled, so it is supporting pinch-to-zoom support and gestures, which is always nice. And as far as that, it also has the accelerometer built into the device for tilt sensing, as well as a proximity sensor and for light sensing to adjust the automatic screen brightness of the screen. And the screen is also coated with a scratch-resistant layer by LG, which prevents a lot of scratching from keys and also coins when you're in their bags or in your pocket. So it is something nice as well. The device weighs around 5 ounces, which is an average, again, weight. So as far as that's concerned, it is pretty nice. As far as processor speed, it has a dual-core 1.2 gigahertz processor on board, and it has 1 GB of RAM, and also has 8 GB of built-in storage or ROM. And you can also expand that via a micro SD card to further expand the memory even more, which is always nice. And the camera is 5.0 megapixels. So let's take a brief first look at the hardware and design. The device is made entirely out of plastic, so it isn't the highest, best-feeling premium device on the market that we've seen, but it does have a pretty solid feel to it. It doesn't cringe or anything. It has a nice weight to it. What's kind of unique about the design is on both edges of the phone we have this curvature, which makes it seem a little bit thicker on the side and gets a little bit thinner, kind of like a wedge, very reminiscent of some Sony tablets out there, which is interesting. And some of these some of these keys are actually for decorative purposes. For example, on the left here, you see this little button. This actually doesn't do anything, but on the right here, this actually dubs as a power on and off key, so there's something to take note of. It's kind of interesting as well to place a power key on the side of the phone instead of on the top of the device, which is only dominated by a 3.5mm headphone jack. The bottom of the device features a speaker grill, which is for calling people, you'll be able to use that, and the top features a earpiece for the speaker, for the earpiece. There's also a 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera for video conferencing, which works pretty well. And as far as the screen is considered, it's completely flat, and the design is actually a little bit reminiscent of some BlackBerry devices, maybe the BlackBerry Z10, because it has a similar design as far as plastic aesthetic to it. The bottom of the device retains the same standard Android hotkeys composing of a menu, home, back, and search keys. These keys are backlit and they are capacitive, so they are pretty easy to use even in darker environments, which is always nice. Again, with a dual-core processor running at 1.2 gigahertz, this device is pretty speedy, which we'll see again in more detail later on. The left-hand side device also features a volume rocker. It's pretty tactile, and also a micro USB for charging and syncing the device to a computer. Again, the back features that 5.0 megapixel aforementioned camera. It's autofocus and also has a LED flash. And you can see the speaker grill for real music and for loudspeakers on the back as well. What's interesting about on the back here is that it has actually a very interesting design to it. It's difficult to see. It's etched into the plastic. You can see it's kind of like a jean-like design. It's actually really reminiscent of the Motorola Atrix, which is, you can see on the side, has a very similar pattern by Motorola, but of course this is an LG's handset, which is quite interesting to note. Now, behind the back cover, which you can remove by taking off like so, you'll see a battery with it's a 3.7 volt battery coming in at 1,700 milliamps, and also you can see that there is a micro SIM card slot as well as the full micro SD card slot, which is located on the left-hand side of the device, so it's hot swappable, which is always nice. Now, you might be wondering, why would a Verizon handset have a SIM card slot at all? This is actually because the LG Lucid is both a GSM device and a CDMA device for Verizon. This is a world phone, so when you're traveling out of the States, for example in Europe, it's automatically going to go and become a GSM device and travel to a GSM band. So this is a true world phone. Now, of course, if you get it unlocked, it also means that if you're living in Asia, you can just use it as a standalone GSM device and forget about the CDMA features as well. So overall, as far as design is considered, it is a pretty nicely designed, pretty stylish, pretty discreet device. Nothing too fancy, nothing too that shouts at you, but it does have some premium design accents that we definitely liked. And overall, it's an interesting take from LG. And we'll go on for the actual performance of the UI in part 2 of this video review. So keep tuned here at osandvtxreviews.com.